It's the SNL Hall of Fame podcast with Chief Conversationalist Thomas Sena. Featuring Matt Ardill. And special guest, Sammy Kay. And now, curator of the hall, JD.
Thank you so much, Doug Denatz. It is an absolute thrill to be here with you. The second to last episode of the nominee portion before we get into the Don Pardo Award and the always fan favorite Roundtable. And then we're going to open up voting. And it's all up to you at that point. But before we get any further, I'd like to let you inside, but before I do that, please wipe your feet. The SNL Hall of Fame podcast is a weekly affair where each episode we take a deep dive into the career of a former cast member, host, musical guest, or writer, and we add them to the ballot for your consideration. Once the nominees have been announced, we turn to you, the listener, to vote for the most deserving and help determine who will be enshrined for perpetuity in the hall. And that's how we play the game. It's just that simple. Welcome aboard. Your feet are nice and clean. So let's walk on down the hall here, like Jim Morrison might have said in the past, and go visit our friend Matthew Ardill. As I am on my way down there, I want to remind you that we have a brand new email address, and it is the SNL Hall of Fame at gmail.com. The SNL Hall of Fame at gmail.com. The email's so nice, I had to say it twice. So there's that. Oh, Matt, how are you doing today, my friend?
Hey, JD, I'm good. I need a little pepper up in here because this is going to be a tasty bit of trivia.
If that didn't give it away, we're talking today about Bobby Moynihan, and he will be nominated by Sammy Kay when we get to the conversation with Thomas. But first, our friend Matt Ardill. Matt, why don't you start at the start with Bobby Moynihan?
Height 5'8", born January 31st, 1977 in Eastchester, New York. Bobby Moynihan attended the University of Connecticut School of Fine Arts in 1999. He actually grew up working as a lifeguard. He has 177 acting credits, 7 writing credits, and 4 producing credits. And I have to say, one of his best post-SNL roles in my mind is Louie from DuckTales. He did a great job. That DuckTales is actually very good with a lot of former SNL stars on it.
Good things, yeah.
Yeah. So he performed with the Derek Comedy Sketch Group and appeared in their film Mystery Team. He was a member of UCB in New York for 9 years and was the original voice for Happy in the pilot of the Christopher Meloni vehicle Happy, but was replaced by Patton Oswalt. Which I actually kind of feel is unfortunate. I think, I love Patton, but I think Bobby would have brought something interesting to it. His favorite bands are Pearl Jam, Biggie, G-Love, and Special Sauce, and Amy Winehouse. He has a favorite Muppet, which is Gonzo, which is the right choice. I mean, I love Kermit, I love Fozzie, but Gonzo, he brings class. He does not like not having a beard. In fact, he feels uncomfortable when he doesn't have a beard. He is a big nerd. He was a voice in the Star Wars cartoon Resistance, which blew his mind, making him super happy. And he immediately called his mom, which is probably what I would have done in that scenario. His drink of choice is peach Snapple, and his dream vacation, further cementing how much of a nerd he is, would be to go to Hawaii with the cast of Lost. He is in fact such a fan of the show. He bought the fish biscuit prop from one of the episodes to have in his home. So great big nerd. You gotta love him. One of my favorites, Bobby Moynihan.
All right. Well, let's go down to Thomas and Sammy Kay and hear what they have to say. Thanks, Matt.
All right, thank you so much, JD and Matt. Hello and welcome to another conversation portion of the SNL Hall of Fame. I am your chief conversationalist, Thomas Sena. Today we're going to talk about an awesome nominee. They're all awesome nominees because I'm Mr. Positive. I love all of them, but I especially love this guy who's our nominee today, Mr. Bobby Moynihan, on SNL from 2008 to 2017. Long time tenure. He transcended different casts. I'm sure we'll talk about that with my guest today, but I found that interesting that he really was with two distinct eras, a la like Tim Meadows or somebody like that. So I'm sure we'll get into it with my guest today, the one and only Sammy Kay. How's it going, Sammy? What's up, my man?
Thomas, I'm doing great. Always a fun time to join you here on the SNL Hall of Fame podcast, and tonight especially because there's got to be a compilation out there of the amount of times I've talked about this guy on various other SNL-related podcasts. Mm-hmm. I love Bobby Moynihan. He's truly one of my personal Hall of Fame members, in my personal SNL fandom. So I'm glad I was asked to be on this episode tonight.
Yeah, a lot like me, you're not shy about sharing your fandom with the rest of the world. So that's why I reached out to you for Vanessa Bayer to kind of geek out on Vanessa with me. That's why I reached out to you for Bobby Moynihan. And you'd be the guy for the job. So before we start breaking down Bobby's SNL career and case for the Hall of Fame, we were talking before we hit record. I fell asleep for the most recent SNL episode. As of we're recording this, that was the Bill Burr episode, and I fell asleep. So he asked me, how'd you like the episode? And I'm like, yeah, God, I'm not gonna lie, I fell asleep. So I have yet to watch that, but I know you've been keeping up to date, obviously.
Yeah.
On season 50. How have you felt about season 50 so far? Big season. How have you felt about it?
I've been feeling pretty good on season 50. I find that we're kind of in this weird era. I know a lot of people are talking about this as almost like the ensemble era of the show, where it really does feel like any episode you turn on SNL this season, you could be getting a totally different mix of like the cast members you're getting to see, which I think right now we're in the place where I think the cast is really strong. Like we went into this season with, a couple featured players who have, gotten that promotion. And I think, for the most part, everyone's been getting the opportunity to sort of produce and show like what their kind of sketch is looking like. So, I've been really happy. Like in this past week, we got a Michael Longfellow pre-tape, which I think a lot of people have been asking for a while. And just in general, the election stuff I've been a little mixed on, but overall it's been kind of nice to have people like Dana Carvey and Andy Samberg and Maya Rudolph in the building. But now we've kind of turned the page on that a little bit. So I'm curious to see, kind of what all that looks like. I mean, obviously we had Dana Carvey in the building this week, so I don't know if you got to that part yet, Thomas. But
I think I saw like half of that sketch.
He did.
Elon Musk, right?
Yes, he was Elon Musk, which is very interesting because. It's interesting to see him back. So we'll be curious to see if we'll get like even a Dana Carvey hosted episode this season. I think that would be awesome because it feels like you've had him in the building this many times and we haven't had like a church chat or anything like that. So but overall, I'm really enjoying the season.
Yeah, that's awesome, and that's the flip side of a big complaint that I've even talked about too. It's like this cast is so huge. Flip side of that is, episode by episode, you're going to kind of get a different type of episode. Like this might be a Bowen episode, or you're like, hey, tonight was kind of a Heidi episode, or just Mukes like really rocked it tonight. Back in the day, sometimes like be like, oh, this was a great Dana episode. Next week, this is a great Dana episode. Next week, great. So like you get a lot of different types of episodes. I think flip side of having a big cast that some people don't talk about. So I think that was a really good point. What's going on over at the Saturday Night Network, and how will you be involved this season? I know you always play a big role in what's going on over there.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's, kind of business as usual. We're, doing the hot take shows and the round tables. So, I'm pretty much on, somewhere between 2 and 3 times a month, whether it's on the hot take show or otherwise. I know, I'm not sure when this episode comes out, but I know I'll be on the patron feedback show in a couple weeks, after this run of episodes. But no, just, any opportunity I get to be on and connect with the fans and talk about this, historic season, it's a lot of fun over there.
Yeah, you're an important voice in what's become quite the stable of voices. You're one of the OGs, like a really cool voice and a really neat opinions on SNL. So we always love.
Thank you.
We always love hearing you on this SNN. We always love having you here on the SNL Hall of Fame. So today we're both excited. Bobby Moynihan and Sammy. It's interesting to me. Bobby was never the star or one of these stars, even of SNL. During his time, more of like an awesome utility player, I think.
Yeah.
So like, what in general stood out to you about Bobby?
Yeah, I think for me, it's like there's sort of a nostalgic thing for me with Bobby, and I've gotten the opportunity to interview him, on the Saturday Night Network. So I definitely want to encourage people to go and check that out after this episode if you haven't already. But for me, I started watching the show in like 2007, during that kind of third golden era of the show before Bobby joined the cast. So he was kind of, for me as a new fan, he was the first person who kind of joined the cast and had a amazing career on the show that I really got to see their start and middle and end, their entire career. So for me, I just think he had such a challenge he was like the sole new cast member when he joined the show, kind of like Chloe Trost last season. And we see, sometimes when you're the only person to join your cast, you don't have that, person to write with or, to click with. And maybe you don't have like a long career on the show. But Bobby was able to sort of kind of what you were saying earlier, blend in 2 different eras. He was able to get in with this already established cast, totally, fit in. He never really felt like, something that was separate from that sort of collection of cast members. And then when that cast moves on, he, doesn't become the star, but he continues to kind of play that role in that utility spot in the show with the Kate McKinnons and Cecily Strongs. And he obviously has a great dynamic with Taran Killam on screen with the Star Wars sketches, which I'm sure we'll talk about. But no, I just think as a sketch player, he sort of represents that ensemble nature. Like he's even doing research for tonight's episode, there's never, it's hard to be like, oh, here are the 20 Bobby Moynihan like starring sketches. It's really like he plays an important part in really great sketches that you remember, and you remember it because he's in it.
Yeah, I think he came into the show with the right mindset, and I've heard him talk about this, and he said that he didn't necessarily need to be the star. Like he said, a lot of people would go to SNL and say, I want to be the next Eddie Murphy. I need to be the next Will Ferrell. Bobby didn't have that mindset. He went in figuring out a way to fit in. How could I make this sketch better? What could I do in this role? So he didn't need to be the main attraction on SNL. He went into the show with the mindset of, how can I be a good team player and make this sketch better? And I think and when I said utility player at the beginning, I think that's of the highest compliment. We have our archetypes. We have our superstars like Eddie, like Will Ferrell. We have our glue guys like Phil Hartman, but we also have utility players, which I think is more interesting. Like you said, it's a more ensemble kind of cast member. And I don't know about you, Sammy. I think when I think of a utility player in SNL history, Bobby to me is like almost the archetype of that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I know when we had him on the show to talk to him, he kind of compared himself to, like a Rachel Dratch or like a Chris Parnell, like these people who, again, never the star of the show, but just dynamite sketch performers, able to, kill it on update with their characters. But if you're going through like the SNL YouTube page, you're not going to see a ton of Bobby Moynihan in the thumbnail necessarily. Like he just was able to, make sketches better by just being a part of them. But yeah, I think, describing him as a utility player, definitely kind of, he's one of the greatest to do it in that regard.
And I'm glad you brought up Weekend Update, because that's kind of where I wanted to start off, because I think that's a huge part of Bobby's story on Saturday Night Live. And I've always said, like, when we get a new batch of cast members and we start talking as SNL fans about, like, how can this person make their mark? How can Jane Wickline make her mark? How can Emil Joachim, find his footing at SNL? And my answer is always Weekend Update. Like, if you're a stand-up and you have a bit, try to form it into a Weekend Update bit. If you have characters, try to fit that into Weekend Update. Jane Wickline had a song. Put that on Weekend Update. Weekend Update to me is how we get to know somebody on SNL. And Bobby utilized Weekend Update so well, especially his first few seasons. Like, arguably some of his best work, I would say his best work, might have actually been on Weekend Update, Sammy.
Yeah, I think when you really look back and reflect, he took the update stage by storm. Like you can make an argument that, probably one of 3 or 4 characters that he did on the update desk were like the best thing he did on the show. But I feel like everybody who, was a fan or is a fan of SNL who watched his stuff, I feel like everyone has like their own take on like what was the best character. And I think, you can't say the same thing about a lot of other cast members where it's like, okay, Cecily Strong, the girl that you talk to at a party, like that's like the go-to character. So for him, it's just there's so many different ones between Drunk Uncle, Anthony Crispino, Riblet, even like the impressions he did on Update, like Snooki, and I think he did Guy Fieri on Update and in sketches as well. But yeah, no, he really his characters on Update were just great.
And who's your go-to Update character for Bobby?
I think for me, I'm a Drunk Uncle guy. I love. Well, first off, when he brought Drunk Uncle back in, I think it was season 47 or 48, like that was it's like an incredible moment. Like since I started really covering SNL as a podcaster, that has been one of my like personal highlights. Because I mean he's the type of person who we're not exactly sure if he'll ever host because of just the way the show is booked. Kind of going back to that whole thing of, he was never necessarily a star of the show, but to see him return and of all the characters, he did Drunk Uncle. That was just such a fantastic moment. And for me, like that character, it's so well written and well performed. He's able, I'm like a big pop culture, junkie. And I know, you are as well with, Pop Culture 5, but, he's able to weave all these references in and make these puns and, just the performance every time. I feel like he just got better and better with that portrayal. It's, I can't say I relate to having a drunk uncle, but I feel like it's relatable in that type of person, for some people. So I think that really connected with people.
So, drunk uncle, are you excited for the holidays?
The holidays are not what they used to be, Seth. When I was a kid, Christmas meant something. People got dressed up. They would travel 6 hours in a car. Nowadays, it's just, hey, could you email me dinner? Hey, could you fax me a hug?
This character feels so lived in. I think that's what was most impressive to me. Like, it felt like even his first appearance, like way early, season 37, like it felt just so lived in. Like, it felt like we knew his backstory immediately, and we knew his point of view from probably the very first joke. You can be like, oh, okay, I know where this guy's coming from. And so he just felt like he made the character just so lived in. The jokes like just made sense, and anything that was going on in the world, you can imagine Drunk Uncle having a take on it, a really skewed take.
Yeah,
yeah.
It's such a great time capsule too. Like for those pieces, like the early 2010s, or you said what was the first season that he did it? It was like,
I believe it was like season 37. I think it was like his fourth season on the show.
Yeah. So early 2010s. Like I was watching one earlier where he makes like an Angry Birds reference. Like it's really is just like a time capsule of like where we were. And like when he brought that back in 2022, he just took that, and it was really great to see. So yeah, I always love Drunk Uncle on the show.
Yeah, I think there were millions of people out there who either have a drunk uncle or have like a family member or something that they can totally relate to that. So good on Bobby for really like making a character that's so relatable. One of his other Weekend Update characters, to me, that's really relatable. He's almost like a cousin to Drunk Uncle. I think Anthony Crispino. I think he's like his sober cousin, possibly. I think that's pretty relatable too, Anthony Crispino. I've seen recently, especially, we're post-election, I've seen Anthony Crispino memes related to the election. They pop up all over the place. I love this character.
All right. But you hear about this thing, no?
I don't know until you say it. I don't know.
Did you hear about it? A cop got drunk and arrested a Reese's peanut butter cup. Yeah, but the cop's in trouble, but I think he'll get off, though, because there's no wrong way to arrest the Reese's. So
Nobody arrested a peanut butter cup.
Sure did. It was a famous one, too. It was in that movie Legally Blind.
No, Reese Witherspoon got arrested.
Nope, that's not
for
it.
being drunk.
That's wrong.
Yes, that's exactly
it.
it.
I think you're wrong.
Who told you that?
Who told me that?
Yeah.
My medium smart friend, Dumb Einstein, told me that.
That's another one I'd love to see brought back in some form in this sort of post fake news world. Mm-hmm. I guess I don't know the last time he did it on the show, but I know Bobby was there for the first couple months of the Trump administration. So, but yeah, I mean this is such a great concept for a character as well. For me, like the performance for this, just that you hear about this like type of thing, like the mustache, like everything about the characterization of Anthony Crispino is so great. I was watching one earlier today where, something like to talk about with these characters is like both with, Seth Meyers especially and like Colin Jost, like the way that he plays off of them is so great. They have such a great dynamic. But, the one that I was watching earlier, it was around the time that Charlie Sheen was fired from like 2.5 Men. And like there's this whole thing where like Seth Meyers is like, have you heard about Charlie Sheen? And he's like, oh no, don't know about that. And then he like totally just describes beat for beat like what it was, but like saying it was Charlie Rose or something like that. Like just fantastic. It's again just such a lived-in character. I think that's like a great way to describe a lot of the Weekend Update stuff he did. But yeah, no, this one was always so great.
And that's credit to Bobby, man. Bobby's just so great. Also, his when people talk about, I've been asked a couple times, underrated Weekend Update characters, and Riblet to me always cracked me up. Were you a Riblet fan too?
Oh, for sure. And like I think the thing that really makes Riblet underrated, and I'm not sure if this has always been that way, but I can't find Riblet on YouTube. Like there's something, it's just not available. So it's on the NBC.com. So I was able to go back and revisit those, and I'm like, wow, this is such an underrated character. It's nice to see him, play off of Che, especially like, this is something that I think he introduced in maybe his last season on the show or something like that. Like,
it was late.
It's always amazing when you kind of go back and you revisit somebody like a Bobby, or I think there's a character like this with Vanessa where it's like, wow, they did this in like their last couple episodes, and like this is something that they'll forever be remembered for. But yeah, I think this is so great because something that Bobby is able to do is with a lot of his characters is he can be like really obnoxious. Like he can really be like in your face, a ton of energy. He loves to stare down the barrel of the camera, things like that. And with this, there's such a great juxtaposition between, that sort of obnoxious, fratty personality, and then he actually does a good job like reading Weekend Update jokes.
Well, this isn't Friendly's, Riblet, okay? This is a good job. You can't just get anybody to do this job.
Oh, please! This job ain't that hard. Come on, man. Check it. Watch. I'll do it right now. Hey, yo, Don, give me a key on 3, baby boy.
How do you know Don?
A massive sinkhole opened in the parking lot of a Mississippi IHOP, swallowing more than a dozen cars. Man, if there's one thing you don't expect when you're eating at a Mississippi IHOP, it's to sink lower. Oh, baby, I got your joy.
Something that Bobby's not shy about, and he talked about when we interviewed him, was he is such a diehard fan of SNL. Like, I think if you were to do sort of a breakdown of the people who grew up with SNL, who eventually became cast members, he might be like the number one super fan. So I'm sure for him, being able to go in and, tell Weekend Update jokes. And I think the one I was watching earlier, they're doing like a man on the street type of thing. And he said, he ends it with, good night and have a pleasant tomorrow. Like, I think for him, those are the things that, kind of go back to his core as like an SNL fan who actually made it and became like a great SNL player.
Yeah, you can tell that, and he said as much, that he's just such a fan. Like, we love, like, I compare SNL to sports. So I love when I'm watching a basketball player and they're just like a fan of the game. They know the history, they know what it means. Bobby is the same way. I've heard him say that maybe Lorraine Newman was like his favorite cast member. I actually, for our Lorraine Newman episode, I tried to throw like a Hail Mary and actually get Bobby on the show to see if he would talk Lorraine Newman. I couldn't really get a hold of him, but
oh man, no. Well, I know for sure that he's a fan of Lorraine Newman because his book that he wrote, he wrote a children's book that he talked about when we interviewed him, and in like the special thanks, Lorraine Newman was one of the people that he thanked. So yeah, definitely a big inspiration for him. He always kind of goes back to those OG SNL alum, and finds way to honor them. I know one other tidbit about his SNL fandom that I want to bring up is he played the land shark in SNL 40, which for him was like such a big deal. Like, he was in the costume. Obviously, at that point, you're not going to have Chevy do it, maybe. But no, he played the land shark, and I know that he just wanted to find like any sort of way to be incorporated into SNL 40. So this just shows another aspect of his SNL fandom.
Yeah, what as a Bobby fan, what's another character or sketch that you just have to go back to?
Yeah, no. So I think for me, I want to talk about his sort of dynamic with Taran Killam. And, there was a time, in like 2014 to 2016 where him and Taran were really producing like a lot of these, kind of nerdy pop culture pieces on the show, like Child of the 80s type things. And, the undercover boss Kylo Ren sketch, again, this is something that you look at it on the thumbnail of the YouTube video, and it's Adam Driver, obviously, he's the star of the sketch, but him as the stormtrooper in those sketches. I know that he wrote this with Taran, and was able to get a lot of these pieces on the show. So yeah, I mean there are a ton of examples of sketches that he was able to kind of pour his passion into, and this is one that I think has become sort of a modern classic, SNL sketch for sure.
A buddy of mine saw Kylo Ren take his shirt off in the shower, and he said that Kylo Ren had an 8-pack. But Kylo Ren was shredded.
What? Your friend's a liar, man. Kylo Ren is a punk bitch. That guy looks like he weighs 30 pounds soaking wet underneath that little black dress.
Tim?
Tim!
Oh no, he's choking on food. I see what's in your mind. It is stupid!
Dude, Matt straight up sucks.
And I know Bobby's a big Star Wars fan. He's appeared in Star Wars projects after his SNL days, which I'm sure just thrills the heck out of him. So I mean, getting this sketch on, and Adam Driver doing a great job. But Bobby, I mean, that's the thing about him too, and that's part of the utility piece of it. I mean, he's not the star of this sketch, but he had a big hand in like writing and formulating an iconic sketch. There's another example to me that fits that perfectly. It was the David S. Pumpkin sketch.
Yep.
So Mikey and Bobby formulate this David S. Pumpkin sketch, and they're just the skeletons. They just like, memorable part, but not David S. Pumpkins, not even Leslie coming out and what she does. He's not even Beck and Kate in their roles. He's just one of the dancing skeletons. But for Bobby to formulate this, and then of course Bobby doesn't have to make himself the star, but he's a mind behind like what some people consider like a really kind of classic from that era.
Yeah, I think that David S. Pumpkins is probably the last I mean, obviously it's a Halloween themed sketch, but I think it might be the last character that's come from the show that you can dress up as them for Halloween and people will recognize them. And he definitely was a huge part of getting this on the show, and he's able to play the fool. He was. I feel like we don't talk enough about his ability to be like a physical comedian. Like he was never necessarily like Chris Farley with the way that he used his body in sketches, but he definitely used his body as a prop in sketches. And I think him in the skeleton costume, dancing around in David S. Pumpkins is a great example of his great physical comedy abilities.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the Vinny DiVecchi sketches. So Bobby would come out sometimes as like the little boy, and just like there's just the mental image of Bobby like sitting on either Bill Hader's lap or one of the guests. Like he would just use that physicality so well. I always really liked him, like you say, playing the fool, like the Fox and Friends sketches that he did with like Vanessa. I think Taryn was in those, right? Was Taryn in those? Yeah. Those were that was just Bobby, of course, like just being so good at playing the fool.
I hear ya, but for the folks at home out there, honestly, the safest thing to do is just never ever leave the United States,
yes,
right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, why would you go to Europe? We've already got an Eiffel Tower in Las Vegas.
A great one!
Yeah. If you want to travel the world, just go to the International House of Pancakes. But don't forget your passport.
Fine, that's a pancake.
Oh, well, then I guess I ate my passport.
Well, these things happen.
I think him in that sort of newscaster environment reminds me of the Morning Miami sketches as well, with like Kate McKinnon. I know they did one with Miley Cyrus as well. But yeah, so, again, he has so many tools in his toolbox. Like in those, that is a more sort of he's playing the two sides of it. He's playing the on camera sort of always on sort of newscaster with like a big sort of smile and energy, and then like the moment the cameras are off, he's just like a total like prick essentially. And he was able to kind of for someone who played like such goofy characters on the show, he could like sort of turn it on a dime and be like like a bit of an asshole too, which is great.
Yeah, it's a little jarring, and I like when cast members like play against type like that, because it really has like an effect. Because Bobby, by all accounts, and everywhere that I've heard him, I certainly heard your interview and John's interview with him. I recently heard him. I went back and heard him on Andy Richter's podcast. Everywhere I've heard Bobby, he's just seems like a really nice, sweet guy. And he's very giggly. I love like when he'll say something, he'll just kind of giggle and make himself laugh. So to see him like be an asshole, like I love when that happens.
Yeah, no, incredibly nice and just like a very thoughtful guy. And, you see that side of him in another sketch that I want to talk about. Mm-hmm. This is one that when I revisited for this episode, I totally forgot about, but the One Magical Night sketch with Katy Perry. I don't know if you went back for this one, but this is a great sketch where Jason Sudeikis is, kind of playing the piano at like a sort of jazzy bar. And Bobby and Katy Perry like meet each other, and like there's just all these like inexplicable things that happen to where like they have all these things in common.
First thing you need to know about me, I'm bad news. Trouble follows me everywhere.
I'll take my chances. Favorite drink, go.
Scotch on the rocks. Nickname in high school, Stupid Idiot.
Favorite Ghostbuster?
Winston. Who's the boss? Mona. You cagey little prairie dog.
I got big alligator shoes.
There's just like a musical. I mean, there's just like this song playing throughout the sketch, and it's just a great piece because Bobby is playing just very sweet and silly at the same time, and like you almost believe that he can get with somebody like Katy Perry, and then like the way the sketch ends, where she just falls down the elevator shaft and he just screams. It just is so jarring, but it I think is like a very underrated piece from him, and again shows like another side of his abilities on the show. Yeah.
It's interesting doing research on Bobby as well, because during that era, you could almost like the research could almost be just like picking a sketch at random that appeared in that era and then seeing how Bobby plays it. So it's hard to be like, oh, this is something that Bobby started, as he kind of alluded to. But you can literally just sort of pick a random sketch between probably, maybe I would say 2009 and like 2017, and let's see how Bobby does in this. Let's see what sort of like magic, some little like magic dust that Bobby can sprinkle on this sketch to make it so good. And it's hard for me. I'm not even sure. Like, I love the current cast, but it's hard to think of somebody who has that ability 100% like Bobby does. Because a lot of the really great sketch players right now in the show, it seems like sometimes they're at their best when they star in something. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I mean, I guess like the closest you can kind of, attribute to this cast is maybe like a Mikey Day, who's a bit more of a glue guy. But like certainly, what's interesting about that though is like I don't think of Mikey Day as like a Weekend Update guy. Like obviously he's been on Weekend Update, but he's not necessarily churning out characters like a Heidi Gardner or anything like that. So it is interesting to see kind of where people find their paths on the show. I'd love to bring up another sketch, just if you're going back to 2009 or 2008. Something that I loved to hear Bobby's perspective on when I was able to talk to him was the Single Ladies sketch from the Paul Rudd episode. That is really something that you can tie to being like such a breakout moment for him on the show, because he's in a sketch with Paul Rudd, Beyonce, Andy Samberg, and Justin Timberlake, and he's like the third guy in this trio with Andy Samberg and Justin Timberlake. So to be able to be in that sketch, and I know that he was a big part of getting this on the show and coming up with this concept. And again, going back to the physical comedy of it all, being able to dance, like and be a fool, behind Beyonce, and this was such like a big pop culture moment. I just remember when I was first getting into SNL, this was a sketch that like, in middle school, me and my friends were like, oh my God, did you see this sketch? And it's unfortunate this is another one that because of music rights has kind of been lost to time a little bit, but you can find it out there, and I would definitely suggest people check that out.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know, knowing Bobby, he's just like standing there seeing Justin Timberlake, seeing Beyonce, and he's like, what is my life? Like, what is going on right now that I'm performing with these people? Like, I know Bobby's just like, he doesn't feel entitled. He's probably just so like starstruck. Like, this is so cool. Like, so that's like a moment like that. Like, makes me so happy for Bobby that he was able to do that. We covered during the Rockets episode, we covered the WrestleMania promos, and they did two of them. And I think Bobby was so great that like going from like a professional wrestler yelling kind of promo to like, hey, what's like, that was mean. Like I loved his performances in these.
Yeah, well, you can't have sex with anyone without having a talk first. Comes in your herpes. I heard your doctor said it was the most herpes he'd ever seen.
Well, you heard it here first. Junkyard Mutt has herpes, and it gets settled this Sunday at WrestleMania. And cut.
Oh. Woo. Hey, dude. Hey. So what'd you think, man? That's pretty good, right?
No, not really. Yeah, no, that stuff was kind of personal. Yeah, maybe just talk to me more about stuff you're gonna do to me in the ring.
I loved his dynamic with The Rock in these sketches. You can obviously this is the type of sketch that is perfect for him, for The Rock, because of his background. But the way that Bobby is like dressed up in that WWE sort of outfit with like the big bone and everything like that. But yeah, he just is genuinely like going from sort of the kayfabe wrestling vibe to just like someone who has feelings and emotion and is like, you almost like can like see through the character, and like he's like just a guy in a costume in that moment. So he just had that. He just has that ability to make you emphasize with certain characters as well. So yeah, I love those sketches.
He's just playing a guy who's just like, at that point, his coworkers just being mean to him. And that's all that's happening in that moment. It's not professional wrestling. His coworkers just literally just being mean to him. And so you see how he reacts to that.
Yeah.
Is there anything else on your list that we kind of need to get to with Bobby? We kind of covered a lot of the main ones.
Yeah, there's so, I mean, with him, it's just like, it's hard to do research, but there is just so many little things. A couple that I do want to bring up, the double date sketch with Tim Robinson, Cecily Strong, and Kristen Wiig. I love that sketch.
Is it okay that we're drinking and you're not?
One time I drank a whole liter of root beer and I burped really loud.
What? When?
It was on my birthday last week.
Oh, a Taurus.
There's a lot of these sort of childlike characters that Bobby sort of goes back to that I think he does a great job on the show. Another one I want to shout out. This one's a real deep cut, but when I rewatched this, I'm like, oh my God, I feel like I'm in high school again, because I remember loving this sketch was the Little Fockers fan sketch with Robert De Niro and Ben Stiller, where he plays a kid who's like so excited to be on the set of the third Meet the Parents movie, and he's impressed by the makeup artist and craft services, but then like he meets the real Robert De Niro and he's like not amazed at all. Like, it's such a great concept there, and Bobby's able to again go from being like this sweet sort of innocent presence to kind of being a bit of a prick and Robert De Niro is like the perfect sort of host to play off it, because he's Robert De Niro. He has like such gravitas and stone face, and then you bring Ben Stiller in there and he gets all excited, and it's so great.
Yeah, I loved and I had just remembered this too as you were talking. Like, one of my favorite recurring, they kind of did it maybe 2 or 3 times. It was the original Kings of Catchphrase comedy, and that was a truly an ensemble. I think they did it for sure once when Charlie Day hosted. I think it was like a couple other times that they did it, but just how Bobby's able to like take the essence of like a corny comedian.
Slappy Pappy! Oh man, if a Dracula is chasing you, turn around and trip the mix. Slappy Pappy, wait.
Everybody else in the cast too is awesome, but Bobby tapped perfectly into just this like archetype of just like this corny comedian. I love those Kings of Catchphrase.
Those are so great. Like that was like just the editing in those sketches, and like to be able to kind of stand out amongst all those different cast members. Like, I think that character for him really made an impact. Another pre-tape I want to shout out just now that we're talking about it is the Black Friday sketch. Like, I remember for our Superfan Takeover show, we did a sketch, or we did a favorite Thanksgiving sketch, episode, and this is for me like one of my favorite Thanksgiving sketches. The chaos of Black Friday in the early 2010s. You just had to be there, and like I think Bobby just really sort of captured that, in this. His energy in this was insane. Like, it feels like he's just on drugs, and is just totally just like taking it to this next level, and the escalation of it is great. His energy, he really just had like so many different sort of gears that he was able to shift through. And I think that goes back to him being a great utility player.
Yeah, since we're doing our lightning round here, I would be remiss if I didn't mention something that he didn't even have a line in. It was just a still photo of Bobby as Ass Dan in the Underground Kick spit. So I'll attribute that to Bobby. I think he put his own little spin on it, facial expression.
Thomas, he had a line. He said, "I'm going to live for it," and then it would cut off. Yeah,
you're
those,
right.
Again, this is the era where I was in high school. So that, to me, as a high schooler, like I loved those Crunkmas, Ass Dan pre-tapes with Nassim and Jason Sudeikis. Those were so great.
Rest in peace, Ass Dan.
Yeah, rest in peace. Yeah.
Yeah, so if you want to get a really good taste of Bobby's career, just go watch any random episode from when he was on the show, and I bet you'll get just like the full like Bobby Moynihan experience. So since he left the show, he's come back, like you had mentioned earlier. He did Drunk Uncle. He hasn't hosted. I don't know if he's like, I was hoping that like his role on Mr. Mayor would become something to kind of like have a reason for him to host. He's popped up a ton in other projects where he hasn't been the star. So how do you feel that Bobby's post SNL career has been settling in?
Yeah, I mean, I know that he had a sitcom on CBS like right after, I think it was like Me, Myself, and I or something like that. He had a sitcom, and then Mr. Mayor. I feel bad as such a Bobby fan that I never got into Mr. Mayor, and then it was canceled after 2 seasons. But he's become such a prolific voice actor, which I think he's great at it. I know he's going to be starring in like a new Pixar movie as like the main guy, like the main voice in a Pixar movie. So that's a big thing. And just in general, like if you follow him on Instagram, he is always performing at like UCB and like, these theaters in LA. So like, I think, ultimately, like I feel like he's talked about in interviews, like he said, if there wasn't a Keenan, like I feel like I would have been Keenan because like I would have just kept being on the show, for as long as possible, which didn't end up happening. But I think sketch comedy is just in his blood. So in those formats, like if you ever get a chance to see him live, when I was living in LA, I got to see him twice do Ask Cat at UCB. He is incredible. Like he's just a sketch comedian by trade. So I think the voice acting and things like that, I would obviously love to see him do more. He actually has a movie called Brother Nature with Taran Killam, which it's a dumb comedy, but like I wish we had more than just one Taran Killam, Bobby Moynihan buddy comedy, but we only have one, and it's Brother Nature, and I think you should watch it because it's a dumb, fun comedy with those guys. So we'd always love more from Bobby, but he's finding his lane, in his post SNL career.
That doesn't surprise me to find out that he still performs sometimes at UCB. That's just in his blood. I love a story that he tells. He was performing, I think it might have been Ask Cat, like the night before that he was supposed to debut on SNL or like start his job at SNL. And I love that he says that Robin Williams just kind of randomly showed up to that show.
Wow.
Yeah, but he said Robin, after the show, told Bobby, he's like, "Hey, I heard that you got SNL. Congratulations!" And then Robin's like, "We should do a bit where I show up to work as you, and I just pretend to be you the whole." And then Bobby was like, the sweetheart that Bobby is, he's like, "And I didn't know how to tell Robin that that I didn't want to do that bit because it would probably there was probably no quicker way for Lauren to hate Bobby if he did something like that."
Wow, that's an amazing story. I never heard that one.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah. So I can just imagine Bobby telling Robin Williams, like, "Well, I don't know about that. I don't know." But like, he's such a creative dude. He went to UConn for puppetry.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and he's a very artistic guy. So a lot of facets to Bobby. So anything that he does, I did check out Mr. Mayor. I need to see that movie with Taran. But anything that he does, like I'm in. I root for Bobby's success, and I want to play fantasy booking with you, Sammy.
Yeah.
Real quick for SNL 50. In what capacity would you really want to see Bobby in?
Whew, that is a good question. What capacity? I mean, God, that's so hard. I feel like there was a point in SNL 40 where and I feel like this was sort of a mixed reaction to this from the fan community, but they had celebrities come in and sort of on update, play their favorite characters. So you had Emma Stone as Rosanna Dana, and Melissa McCarthy as Matt Foley and things of that nature. I just think because he's such a big SNL fan, if there was some opportunity for him to go and be like, "Bobby, what's your favorite character? Like, I want to see your take on this favorite character." Like, I think, as a big SNL fan and as Bobby being a big SNL fan, I think that would be really cool to see and be like, what is he going to pick? Because he's already played the land shark, so he can't do that, but maybe he'll play something else.
See, this is why I asked these questions, because I was in my mind, I was like, well, maybe Anthony Crispino would be fun, but you your answer tapped into just who Bobby is, which is almost like an SNL fan first and foremost. So I think that'd be so cool. I'm on board. let's talk to whoever we need to talk to at NBC. Let Bobby go on Weekend Update or something, and just let him play one of his favorite beloved characters from SNL's past. That's perfect, man.
I co-sign that. Let's do it.
Yeah, great idea. So now's the time here, Sammy. We're talking to voters. We're talking to the water cooler people. Why should SNL Hall of Fame voters consider Bobby Moynihan for the SNL Hall of Fame?
Yeah, I mean, Bobby Moynihan he is a team player, and I think for SNL to be a thriving sketch comedy show and to be the institution it is, you need guys that are going to come off the bench and just absolutely deliver, whether they're the star of a sketch or whether they're just a background player giving you a look. And that's what you get from Bobby Moynihan. You get the definition of a utility player, somebody who is an absolute king on the Weekend Update desk with so many memorable characters. And like we've mentioned throughout this episode, you can go, pick a random episode of SNL from his time on the show, and you're going to get something great from Bobby Moynihan every time you come and check out an episode that he's in. So, I think he just has so many different comedy tools in his tool belt, and I think that is what makes him such an awesome SNL cast member and deserves to be in the Hall of Fame.
There you have it. Bobby Moynihan with his tool belt, keeping up his tool pants. So there's that. I want to thank Sammy Kay so much for making such an impassioned argument, and Thomas for whittling it out of him. Now, one of the things Sammy mentioned in his argument was the MVP status for Bobby at the Weekend Update desk. So it only makes sense to play you one of those Weekend Update characters at this juncture. And we are going to choose a drunk uncle bit. Again, this comes from Weekend Update. This is Drunk Uncle on the SNL Hall of Fame.
Across America, and that means time spent with family. Here with his thoughts on graduation is our own drunk uncle.
I didn't graduate high school.
Welcome back, drunk uncle. So are you going to any graduation ceremonies this year?
Not if I can help it. School's just not the same anymore, Seth. When I was a kid, we studied real subjects. You were either blacksmith, cobbler, butcher, baker, candlestick maker. Okay? And when I graduated from exterminator school, all I got was the keys to a dirty van and fibromyalgia. Nowadays it's just, is my diploma on seamless? Can I light an e-cig with my bitcoins, please? Barf. If I see another idiot with an e-cig, I'm gonna punch him in the esophagus. Jew kids on the block.
All right, drunk uncle.
Kids today they don't even care about education anymore. All they care about is Beats by Dre. When I was in school, if you wore something like that on your head, you would get Beats by Mutt and Jeff. You want to see my impression of America? Selfie! Selfie! Duckface! Selfie! I'm an idiot! Barf! I got a filter you could use. It's called a green card.
Oh. Drunk uncle, I'm afraid you're actually too drunk.
Yeah, I'll buy the Clippers! I believe I can fly. I believe I can
Drunk uncle.
So I wasn't cream of the class, okay? So I wasn't voted most likely to live, okay? So I don't know how to train your dragon, okay? You stay right there, dragon. No, fire, 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 fire. That's not me.
I don't think that's anyone.
So in conclusion, I would just like to say to the graduating class of 2012, what do you call a fish with no eyes?
Excuse me?
I said, what do you call a fish with no eyes?
I don't know. What do you call it?
A fish.
For Weekend Update, I'm Cecily Strong. That's pretty cool, right? I mean, she was only there for half a season. So we got her in this clip. I think that's pretty cool, but that's just me. Next week on the program, we welcome Rebecca North back. You may remember her visit last season when she successfully lobbied for Maya Rudolph, who made it into the hall on her 5th ballot. This time around, she'll be tackling another favorite in Aidy Bryant. You don't want to miss this episode, folks. It's the way we're going to wrap up the season, and we'll kick it into the postseason, which is, of course, the Don Pardo Award, when voting will open on that Monday. So 2 weeks from now, if you will. And then, of course, the Roundtable, which is always one of my favorites. I want to thank Matt Ardill, Thomas Sena, and, of course, our guest, Sammy Kay. It's wonderful having you here. We're very appreciative. And again, I want to share our new email address, the SNL Hall of Fame @gmail.com. Send us an email. We'd love to hear from you. We'd also love it if you shared, subscribed, rated, and reviewed the podcast. That's a lot we're asking of you, I know. So maybe even choose one of those things. That would be cool. And that's what I've got for you this week. Again, remember next week we welcome Rebecca North, where we talk about Aidy Bryant. The week after that, we open up voting and we discuss the Don Pardo Award. I won't tell you who we're nominating this year. And then, of course, the Roundtable, followed by the finale of season 6. So there's that. And now I'd like to bid you adieu, because that's what I've got for you today. Please do me a favor, and on your way out, as you pass the Weekend Update exhibit, turn out the lights, because the SNL Hall of Fame is now closed.
Thanks for listening to the SNL Hall of Fame podcast. Make sure to rate, review, share, and subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. Follow us on social media at SNL HOF. This is Doug Denant saying, see you next week.
To podcasts and such.